Well, this is a bit of an abomination. Well, would you look at that? Hey, welcome back. So the Bavarian burner over here won't start on me. It's been an ongoing issue ever since I put the subframe back in it. So this video starts from a few months ago, but I'll show you what's going on. So if I go to start it, runs for a second, stops. I can sit here all day long and it ain't gonna happen. However, if I let it sit on ignition for like 10 minutes, it starts without fail every time. Alright, so we'll start with the basics. Air, fuel, spark, and timing. Since the issue's been since the fuel tank's been out, I'm gonna start with the fuel side of things. So I'm gonna start by checking if there's actually fuel pressure there, because you can still have power to the pump, but then have it not be any good and not send any pressure. So we'll start there. On these 6-cylinder Beamers, there's a little Schrader valve on top of the fuel rail here. That's the fuel rail. Fuel pressure gauges should have an adapter, if not a normal fitting for that. Alright, a bit over 50 psi, not too bad. So the fuel pressure is at the moment's okay, so let's see what happens when we actually try and wind it over. Alright, well it's maintaining pressure even in the crank, so fuel might not be our issue. Well, fuel pressure anyway, we've got plenty of pressure there. Alright, see what's going on in the spark department. Alright, I got this spark tester. Looks pretty crappy. I did have a better one that you could actually set the gap, but I lost it, and they seem really hard to find now. But if you don't have any of this, if you're feeling brave, you can just use a screwdriver and just hold it near some earth, and at least it'll tell you if you got a spark or not. But half the time you'll get zapped with like 40 kilovolts of coil pack power. Well, this is a bit of an abomination, but let's see what happens. Alright, so we got some form of spark going on. So we got fuel pressure and we got spark. So things are starting to get a bit more difficult. So I'm going to check that there's pulse to the injectors using a Noid light, which means I've got to get to the back of the injector plugs, which on most cars is not a drama, but being a BMW, it's going to be a giant pain in the anus. Ow! Alright, we'll deal with this mess later. So there's a Noid light, so that'll just tell us if we're getting signal to the injector. Let's go. So it looks like we do have injector pulse as well. So we've got fuel pressure, injector pulse, and spark. So I'm going to assume that timing's okay, because when it runs, it does run fine. Usually if there's a timing issue, it just would not run at all. The one thing I did notice from this is it looked like the injector pulse got weak as I was still turning it over when it was running. The flashes got pretty hard to see. Don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but what I might do is I'll try and get it to the state where it runs after I've left the ignition on, see how bright the pulse is when it's running, and then I'll also disconnect the fuel pump and then see how bright the pulse is when it's supposed to run after it's been sitting for 10 minutes, if you know what I mean. Alright, so that did look a bit brighter to me. So I've just disconnected the fuel pump now, and I'll see what it's like with that disconnected. Alright, it does look like there's bloody crows. It's the afternoon now, so they're bloody going off. Anyway, it does look like there's a difference between how bright the injector pulse is when it's in the non-start condition to when it's meant to run. Usually though, if it's an immobilization issue, you won't have any injector pulse at all, so it's a bit confusing. So another method to see if we got fuel, if it's a fuel or a spark issue or what, is this. Start your bastard. This is just ether, it's just an accelerant. You spray it in there, in the intake. If I can get the car running on this stuff, that means all the timing, the spark and everything's okay, and we're looking at a fuel issue. Let's go. Looks like it's definitely a fuel issue. So now might be steering towards like some sort of, dunno. So one thing I'm just going to check before I go chasing my tail too much is just all the basics like the fuses and stuff. So there's some hidden ones here. It looks like this, it just looks empty, but if you look down in there, there's fuses hidden in there. Yep, they're all good. Now I'll just check the ones under the dash. Alright, it's been a few months now. Still haven't got to the bottom of it. I've even had it to the track, as you've seen in my previous videos, and I've just been dealing with it. A few things have changed, as you can see. The addition of this and coilovers. Now this has got the old style plug for diagnostics, so I don't have the adapter for that, so there's no way of me accessing information on the ECU of this thing yet. But it's gotten to the point where it doesn't even start at all now, even if you leave it sit. So out of sheer desperation, I tried something. Watch this. Disconnect the MAF. Hey. There you go. So I'm going to try and give it a clean, because that's the cheaper of the two options aside from getting a new one. But I'm pretty doubtful. I'd say it's probably going to need a new one, which is fine. I'm happy with that, if that's the case. So I only ever use this stuff, airflow sensor cleaner on these. Don't use carby cleaner or anything like that, because it can leave residue or, yeah, just use this. Yeah, so it doesn't want to know about it. So I'd say there's actually like an internal fault rather than just the sensor pickup having an issue. Like there's probably a open circuit in here or something. It's probably telling the ECU that there's no airflow, and then it's cutting injector pulse, I'd say. Why does it run when it's disconnected? Well, on these, well, most cars, usually if there's a fault with the airflow sensor, it'll go into a kind of a fail-safe mode, where it'll just take parameters from all the other bits, like the oxygen sensor and throttle position and that, and just make an estimate of how to make it run. And it'll run, it'll feel okay, but it'll be underpowered and fuel economy will be out, and yeah, so it's sort of just to get you to where you gotta go. Get a new one of these and see how we go. So I found an eBay special. Hopefully it's the right one. Yeah, looks alright. Looks like the same one. The first few places I rang around quoted me like over 200 bucks, which I'm not surprised at for once you start quoting up Euro parts. But after doing some research, I found that there's a Hyundai, maybe Elantra from back in the early 2000s that runs the same one, exactly the same. And I found that on eBay, well, the eBay listing listed it for both this and the Hyundai, and it was about 50 bucks. Hopefully it's not just going to fail on me after 50 hours of use, but let's see. Moment of truth. Hey! Well, would you look at that? Well, there you go, eh? Something to look out for. But yeah, obviously if you're having dramas, always start with the basics, because there's other things that can cause that kind of starting condition. But yeah, that's one thing to look out for. But sweet as, that makes me happy. That means we can spend more time burning out tyres and less time burning out parts. It might even run better now. It was probably underpowered the last time I took it to the track. But anyway, thanks for all your support so far. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.